So anyway, Martin was fired, and I was surprised when I wrote about this that there was anyone who actually thought that it made sense to fire him. I think they're just still sore about these issues, and they just don't see it clearly. Even if you believe the vaccine mandate was beneficial, you have to postulate. And they say because, of course, it benefits third parties because it slows transmission. Really, 93% to 95%, when you fire 2% of people, that actually slows transmission in the area? What happens to the fired people? What about their transmission? What are they doing instead? Don't you have to factor that into your model here? I think they haven't thought through their little claim. I strongly suspect it's not the case. In fact, there have been some papers on this topic showing that, vaccine mandates and passports require excluding thousands of people to even prevent one transmission event, assuming the best case scenario characteristics of the vaccine, which we know aren't true. And then the other thing they're not factoring in is time, because with enough time after as many, you can vaccinate yourself with 200 doses, like that crazy person in Germany. But with enough time after the last dose, you're still going to get COVID-19. Okay, you're eventually going to get COVID-19. There's no way to avoid COVID-19. So with time, there is no benefit to anybody from these sorts of draconian policies. And then the second thing is, should the punishment be terminating his job forever? And then the third thing is, what message does that send? I think the message it sends is that all sorts of silly hospital policies, from visitor policies to distancing policies to visitor hour policies to masking policies to vaccine policies to all the million policies we face, people are less likely to question those policies because they're worried that the hospital will selectively enforce who to fire who do not comply with those policies. Can you fire Martin for not completing a module? Can you fire Martin because one day he walked in and there was a mask mandate and he didn't put on his mask right away? I mean, you can imagine that they will find people they don't like, and you will look through the policy book. You'll find one of the many policies they didn't follow, and you can just fire those people. So if you selectively enforce policies, I think you have a problem. And I'm confident that's what happened here. And if they disagree, put out the list of all the people you gave the exemptions to. I know what it shows, because I know a lot of people got the exemptions, and they got it for a lot more soft reasons than Martin. Martin applied for an exemption, actually. He says for religious reasons, because he said the vaccine mandate was a religious doctrine, which I thought was funny. So what can one do in response? I think there's a petition right now on change.org. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and that's to reinstate Martin Kulldorff as a Harvard faculty member. I don't know if he wants to work there. I mean, his CV doesn't have enough plagiarism to qualify for being on faculty, and maybe too many publications, but I don't know, maybe he wants to work there. But either way, it should be his decision, and you should sign the petition to reinstate Martin Kulldorff at the Harvard Medical School. And the people who are playing games with him being fired and saying, oh, it's not about his views, they are really, I think, being dishonest. Because if they were honest brokers, they would point out the fact, well, I know lots of people who got the exemption, and it's kind of interesting that Martin didn't, even though he has the same bogus reason for getting the exemption as all the other bogus reasons, because some people just didn't want the vaccine, which should have been their right and prerogative. Of course, you didn't need to force them to get it. There was no benefit to third parties. There never was. And once you offer vaccines to all those adults who wanted them, life should just return to normal, and we shouldn't have played these silly, silly games. And in fact, for younger people, life should have always returned to normal, because the virus didn't pose that much of a threat to their life, and the policies actually were a lot worse for them. So those are my thoughts on Martin Kulldorff. Shouldn't be fired. Sign the petition. Interesting article in City Journal. And if we don't have space at universities for people to disagree with prevailing national policy, and if we selectively enforce these kinds of policies to throw them off faculty, I think you're reaching a very dangerous place where universities no longer serve the public good position that they should as a place to discuss and debate these issues. So I think pretty bad move by Harvard there. The president, meanwhile, of Harvard, of course, she stays on faculty with her $900,000 salary, even though all of her, not all, but at least half of her CV is full of rampant plagiarism. That, to me, literally makes no sense at all.